Cachamaniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Whether you've been joining us for all along or this is just your first time, welcome to the 40th episode of the GeoGearHeads. I'm Daryl W4.
And I'm the bad cop. This show is for geocachers, and we cover a variety of topics of interest to us, but not necessarily limited to geocachers. Today's topic is one of those that will be of interest to all users of technology, and it isn't specifically... I can't get it. Let's start that one over.
All right.
And I'm the bad cop. And this show is for geocachers, and it covers a variety of topics that are of interest to us, but not limited to only geocachers. Today's topic is one of those which will be of interest to all users of technology and isn't specifically related to geocaching. Next week, we're going to flip the switch the other way when we have WV Tim join us to talk about gadget caches. Then the following week with Jeep and Idaho, the talk will be about gear for your off-road vehicles. These are shows you're not going to want to miss.
As always, we'd love to get your questions, comments, and general feedback for either of those shows or anything we talk about today. Most of that comes to us through Google+, but we also have a page on Facebook, and you can tweet us at GeoGearHeads. For files, longer messages, that kind of stuff, you can email us at geogearheads@cachamaniacs.com to contact both the bad cop and I. Of course, the method we prefer is voicemail, and we have one of those coming up in a moment, but that number is 206-350-3647.
Before we get into that call, there's some awesome news on the Munzie front for geocachers. Zeta Farms updated their Cache Sense for Android app this week with support for Munzies. Now, you can turn on a layer on the map to show Munzies, as well as a layer for geocaches and waypoints. Tapping on the Munzie opens a detail card, and from there you can navigate to it. Tap Capture, and it will open the official Munzie app to capture it. Daryl, maybe there is one app to rule them all.
Yeah, I'm certainly liking it. I've been playing with it a little bit, but not all that much because I don't have enough Munzies around here. But why don't we get into that voicemail now?
Hello, Daryl W4 and Bad Cop. This is Super Ted here from the UK. Just ringing to say, love the show. It's a great follow-on from the Cachamaniacs podcast. And I was particularly interested in the one you did last on the waypoints, points of interest, and paperless caching. Lots of useful information in there, I thought, the show you did with Steve. Just have a point which I've never been able to answer. I know I actually cache with the Oregon 300 and use paperless caching, and I'm also frustrated by the limit on the number of caches which you can download that way. Just thought it's always strange that I've never been able to maybe carry around extra pocket queries on, say, a memory stick and somehow transfer those easily over from the memory stick over to the Oregon by deleting the current pocket query which is on the Oregon. I guess it lacks the drag and drop ability if you haven't got a computer in the middle to do that. I was also speaking to another cacher last night, under manager, and he was saying that he's never been able to understand how he also caches with an Oregon 300 and never really been able to understand why he can't put extra pocket queries on the SD card in the Oregon and sort of call them in as necessary to replace the current pocket query he's got there. I couldn't do that because my SD card has got the UK mapping on it, so I wouldn't really want to interfere with that, the information which is on there. So thanks, guys. Enjoy listening to your show, and keep up the good work. Bye for now.
Well, thanks, Super Ted. We really do love those tough questions here. Now, the only thing I can think to do is carry around multiple SD cards for the Oregon. You can have each one loaded with the PQ or the caches you want to hunt. You could also copy those UK maps onto each SD card. It's not an elegant system, so we thought we'd ask our listeners. We posted it to Google Plus and received several good ideas, but we still don't have a good solution. So if you have a different way, other than the ones that we are about to mention, please give us an email at geogearheads@cacheamaniacs.com or call them in to 206-350-3647, and we'll share them in the upcoming weeks.
One of the pieces of feedback we did get was from Tom on Google Plus, and he suggested carrying those multiple SD cards or an external device like the portable picture and data backup drives, which usually lets you stick the cards in and do the the copying, then the file management kind of stuff. So that would be a way to do it. But again, you'd have to use on the card. Another option that was offered is USB on the go with a phone or tablet that supports, and that with a file manager should let you do that.
Yeah. Now, Quads in the Mud from right here in Washington State said the internal memory of an Oregon 300 is 850 megs, so you can load a bunch of maps onto the unit and just use some of the small SD cards for the GPX files. You can't load the whole City Navigator map set, but you can load a ton of the US. I don't know how I ever lived with a 200 cache limit on my 300, and the 500 or 5,000 limit is now a little tough on my 550 and 450. Since the road trips seem to be getting longer and longer to go caching. I won't upgrade until the Montana will record video because I'm very happy with the 550, he says. I downloaded a few tiles for the Oxford area, and they seem like they're an overlay. He could load City Nav and then add the areas he hikes in. I also looked up the size of the topo maps for the UK, and he needs 1.45 gigs. So thanks, Quads in the Mud. Daryl, in my experience, I've been able to load the continental U.S. onto my Oregon 200 and about 46 of the 50 states onto the old Nuvi 205. So,
yeah, and my experience with topo is quite a bit different in that with the topo maps, I don't have anywhere near enough room to really put anything usable in the for as much as we were traveling into the unit. So we had to put those on the card, and we pretty much filled the card with as much as we possibly could. So I do like the idea of hopefully that's going to come and work out pretty well, because I'd love to be able to do something like that where you could actually even load the pocket queries while you're in the field right from your smartphone that you just stuff. Anything else that it does in the future is kind of icing on the cake. But boy, wouldn't it be nice if they could catch up with some of the stuff that they've got on the Android devices?
Sure looks like they have the functionality in place, but we'll see if it comes to be.
Yeah. Now, we do have a great show today with a tech journalist many of you might know, Andy Inako of the Chicago Sun-Times, the Twit Network, and the Inako Almanac, and he's going to join us today to talk about recovering your wet devices. So welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. Nice to hear people talking about maps that you do not stream from an internet source for a change.
Yeah, with the Apple Maps that have been all the rage lately, that's like the only thing we can hear. And here I'm thinking, I haven't used the Map app on my phone or on my tablets in probably a year, 2 years, except maybe once in a while to pop in and just see what it's like again when people ask me.
Yeah, I was doing some house cleaning the other day, and I came across the Delorme mapping set of something like what was it, 8 CD-ROMs, using like probably the last Windows machine that was my main machine ever just issuing a selection rectangle around the area you wanted to receive a map of on your device. That took about 23 minutes, as it said. I know that right now I'm focused on the entirety of New England, but I'm going to pretend that I'm going to draw every single road, every single river, every single stream, every single border, even though all you really want to do is select 3 towns from this. Yeah. So there are upsides and then there are downsides to having downloadable maps.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for joining us. And we brought you on largely because of a great article that you wrote a couple of years ago now. Actually, I think it's more than just a couple, about salvaging wet electronics. And we'll link to the post that you had done on your blog about that. And can you kind of tell us what that whole thing was about? Because I know it was more than just the article.
Yeah, it was sort of one of those MythBusters style things where I spent a long time collecting all of these like anecdotal pieces of advice on if you drop your phone in the toilet, or if you run a device like through the washing machine, you forget to empty out your pants. Here are things you should try to do to try to salvage it. And fortunately, if you are a columnist for a great metropolitan newspaper, you might be able to convince a cell phone carrier to please send me 6 identical copies of a phone, and then promise them, oh, I will destroy all of them. I just want to try to do this little experiment. So yeah, it was pretty cool because you never really you don't once you've dropped your phone or your camera in a river, you don't have time then to decide which method you're going to use. So you really want to have the right method sort of in your hip pocket before that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And fortunately, if you're using a GPS, most of those tend to be fairly good about handling the water. They're water sealed, but not always. And a lot of these GPSs, if you have any of the ports covers that come off, well, then you're up the creek. You have to, act pretty fast. And the first thing that you're going to want to do with any device that happens to take a accidental dunk in the water is to remove the batteries if you can. And there's some mixed reports on what you want to do with some of the GPSs that I've seen. Some people say you actually should turn it off first. And my first reaction is, get the batteries out. Don't do anything. Just shut it off, because the more you touch that device and work the buttons, the more you're turning on screens and stuff, the more risk there is of damage.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially when you're talking about devices like GPSs where you have depressive switches. That's just another opportunity to get moisture inside the device. It's a different thing with phones. Unfortunately, not, especially when you talk about something like the iPhone where the entire damn thing is sealed up. You cannot get at the battery and pull it. So you just got to sort of take your chances there.
Yeah, and with the iPhone, with the Razr M and so many of these new phones that don't have the removable batteries, you can't move the battery, so you're kind of in a rough spot as to whether to turn off the device or to just leave it in its hopefully sleep mode. And again, I'm seeing some mixed reports, and my gut reaction is you're going to probably do more damage if you try to turn that device off than if you just leave it in its sleep mode.
Yeah, because when you hit that button, remember that it's not just a power button, it's also a wake button. So right now it's drawing just a fraction of its power just to keep some of its RAM alive. If you were to hold down the button to turn it off, the first thing the iPhone says is that, oh, I need to turn my screen on so I can confirm the user actually wants to turn it off. So yeah, you definitely want to avoid doing that. Although there is one sort of unexpected trick when it comes to iPhones particularly, and it has to do with how wonderful their service is. The managers of every Apple store has ungodly and unlimited power to make a customer happy. I did a story about a year and a half or 2 years ago trying to figure out what the extent of those things are. I talked to a lot of people who were present and former Apple Genius Bar employees. They all told me the same thing. They have sort of an informal, quote, "we're awesome," unquote, policy that sometimes they put into effect. And the other phrase that kept coming up is that if the user is honest with us and if they try to take care of their device, their Apple device, we will try to take care of them. So even if you were totally negligent or stupid, or you just forgot the thing was in your pocket, and you before you jumped off the log into the river or did your wash, your iPhone is dead. Yes, there is a little dot inside the case that will tip off the Genius Bar point that yes, this thing has been exposed to water. But if you are honest and you said, "Gee, I just bought this iPhone 3 weeks ago. It's just so slim. I patted down my pockets. I didn't see it. I washed it. I'm kind of beside myself. Is there anything we can do to bring this back to life?" It's possible that they'll just simply say, "You know what? We have some extra units. We will swap you out. Realize that we don't have to do this. We're just doing this because we're awesome. Just try to be a little more careful in the future." It's not a guarantee it'll happen, but it's a good enough chance that you should actually go out and try it.
I've heard that happen myself with several of my friends. They've gotten it wet, and the water indicator on the iPhones is down the headphones port. So you got to get a flashlight, shine down there, and they can tell you right away, yeah, it's wet. I've heard just simply taking it into a steamy shower or steamy bathroom is enough to trigger those stickers.
Yeah, and that is annoying, isn't it? Because they're never going to believe if that sticker is telling one version of the truth. There's no way they're going to believe that that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Well, and the iPhone actually has two on, I believe, all of the models, at least through the iPhone 5. I don't know if the iPhone 5 has it, but there's actually one in the dock connector as well as one up top. And one of the interesting things is when you go into the Genius Bar with any kind of hardware possibility of a hardware problem, they instantly take out their little scope and they look at both of those right away. And it is just kind of fun to sit there and grab a phone from a friend of yours and take a look at it. And yeah, you've taken this into the shower, haven't you?
It really is a lot like that. Like every police procedural TV show where they take your iPhone into one room, they take you into another room. They just want to know if your stories match.
Exactly. It's interesting though, because I have seen some people who have like just the headphone jack that's gotten wet, but not their dock connector. So I'm thinking it's got to be one of these. Well, they had it in a case or something, and we're walking around when it's raining. So the headphone jack got wet, but nothing else.
Yeah, that's why I love these weatherproof cases and these weatherproof GPS devices, because I travel a lot, and my favorite thing to do is I'm in Dublin, I've got 4 hours off, I'm going to pick an arbitrary destination and walk there and back. And of course the iPhone or the device is right in my shirt pocket, and it gets a little bit warm and maybe it gets a little bit sweaty, and I would hate to think that I've destroyed a device just by being physically active for one day out of every 30.
That's a good point. And it is an important point to know that just about every cell phone device has these sensors in there. So if you try to take it into your local store, your branch, whatever, no matter what that device is, and tell them, I don't know, it just stopped working, they're going to know if it got wet. And like we mentioned, it doesn't necessarily have to be, a full-blown soaking. It can just be a really humid situation. So if you are going to be taking it into one of these more humid situations, or when you're out raining, you really should have it in some kind of case that will protect it. And we've mentioned the dry bags before. That's a cheap, easy solution, and I like them because they're cheap, easy, and flexible. I can put my Nexus 7 in the same one I put my iPhone in.
Right.
Now, Andy, have you ever played much with the dry bags or any of the cases like that, or are you just using kind of the baggy kind of situation?
Faith in God? Yes, I rely on faith in God. It's I do have a sealed case. I do have an outer box that's again it will protect the iPhone against everything up to and including the biblical apocalypse. But the difficulty is that who wants to take this beautifully designed iPhone and put this in this thing that basically turns into a shoebox with a little window cut out in it? So that's why my usual thing is I would just try to take good care of it. And in my day bag, I usually have a couple of sandwich bags in there, so that if worse comes to worse, if I really am in a downpour situation, it will be taken out of my shirt pocket. It'll be taken someplace secure. I'm not quite that active that I should have a bunch of. I don't do a lot of kayaking. I don't do a lot of cliff diving, so I don't have a need to keep those on hand. But yeah, I mean, if you think about how little these little sandwich bags weigh, how much space they take up, and man, the number of times when I thought it was a good day and I had to desperately find a solution to protect my $600 camera around my neck. Goodness, that 2 seconds worth of forethought inside your kitchen really pays off in the long run.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, it does. And
Badcap, I think you actually have used the OtterBox as well.
Yes, I've used the OtterBox, and I agree with Andy 100%. It takes this nice, slim, pocketable device and turns it into something you need an entire backpack for. However, it will save the thing from being run over by a Jeep. So,
well, it'll still get run over by the Jeep. It'll just be okay later on.
It'll be okay when it's done. So, the OtterBox is a great piece of protection for your phone, but you sacrifice a little usability or carryability.
Don't give them they'll charge you $200 for a new phone. So that's the time when you wish Superman could spin back time and put the thing in a case. So,
right.
Now, one of the questions, though, is do you take the phone out of the case if it's gotten wet, or out of the bag? Because you could have a leak, you'd maybe not seal it up right. And again, that's one of those situations you kind of have to take it into account while you're there. If it's still raining, you're probably going to do more damage by taking it out, or if you're still in the water. But in general, as soon as you can get it out in a drier situation, you're going to want to take that device out and get it away from the case in the water.
Yeah, I mean, there's surface moisture, but then there's whatever managed to infiltrate its way inside the device. And I tried 6 different things, six different remedies. 2 of them were excellent. One of them involved like $100 device that you probably don't already have in your house. There's people who wear hearing aids. Obviously, moisture is going to be a problem for their electronic device all the time. So they actually manufacture these boxes that are drying boxes specifically designed to take moisture out of these little electronic devices. And they are usually big. It's like a little tiny like mouse coffin, and it's usually big enough to hold the phone. And so if you do put a device in there, not only will it probably bring your assuming that you have not run afoul of the forces of light, there's an excellent chance, the best chance, that you will be able to recover your device because it is designed specifically for that purpose. But you probably don't have one of these $100 hearing aid drying devices in your house. What you probably do have is white rice, maybe, and that was the other thing that worked a complete treat. Because white rice, it just absorbs moisture. That's how it puffs up like 5 times its normal body weight. So long as you put it inside some sort of an airtight container, either a small Tupperware container or a Ziploc bag with a few cups of rice, just bury it inside that rice. The rice will simply absorb as much moisture as it possibly can out of that device. You want to make sure it's inside an airtight container because you want the rice to take moisture out of the device and not out of the surrounding atmosphere. But it works really wonderfully. The other thing you can do if you don't have white rice inside your house and you're desperately running to the supermarket with your iPhone still dripping, you can actually also get that's the not regular kitty litter, but there's a special kind of silicate kitty litter, like it's usually like blue crystals, and they are actually made out of silica gel, the exact same stuff you find in those little white pouches and when you buy new electronics. It's designed to take moisture out of the atmosphere, and this does an even better job of wicking away moisture. So those are the only 2 things that I tried that were successful. I'm sorry, 3 if you include the cat litter. But if you have any chance of getting these things back at all, that is the chance that those are your best options. Although, as you said, a lot of it is just either there are 3 things you can do that are even smarter than that. Number 1, don't drop. Either if you know you're going to be in a hazardous situation, put it in that bag. Secondly, make sure if you do get it wet, make sure you pull the batteries. Don't turn it on. Don't turn it on at all. Just try to do your best to shake the water off, and then go to recovery. And third, and this is something that an uncle of mine, when I was 6 years old, explained to me very, very carefully when he let me use his binoculars. He said, "This is called a neck strap. It's not decorative. It's there to prevent you from dropping this and having a bad day." Because, Andy, are you planning right now to drop my $300 binoculars onto a stone step? No? Okay. So we were in agreement in saying that if you were to drop it, it would be a what? Yes, an accident. So if you wear the strap, or I extrapolate that to if you wear the hand strap for the device, and you do drop it, well, you will drop it all 3 inches. It'll be dangly off your wrist, and you'll think, oh, aren't I silly to have lost my grip on this device? And that will be the end of it.
Yeah. Prevention is always better than trying to recover.
Sometimes you can't call Superman to spin the Earth backwards and make you not have done that stupid thing that you definitely wish you hadn't done.
Yeah, I think he annoys people with the whole back in time thing. So, what were some of the other things that you tried, Andy? You said you did 6, and we talked about 3.
I tried a bunch. One of them was actually vodka. The theory there
for
being
you
that,
or the device?
A little of both.
Okay.
If you get the good quality vodka in the plastic jug, then yeah. The idea there is that the vodka being like good Russian 180 proof alcohol, the alcohol will push out all the water. The alcohol, then being alcohol, will dry, like
Evaporate.
disappear in the atmosphere in seconds and leave behind a perfectly wonderful, perfectly intact device. That proved not to be the case, but I did have a good half-gallon of cheap Russian vodka left over after that, so that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Another idea was to run it in the dishwasher, like just in the drying cycle. That I don't think it necessarily hurt the device, but it didn't result in a fixed device. Actually, since then I found another one, which is literally just air dry it. I did that as a control, as a matter of fact, and it just didn't work. Unfortunately, this is where you find out whether or not you've been lucky or unlucky. But I should do a follow-up sometime soon, because occasionally people send me like new ideas. I know that my name does tend to turn up in Google searches, usually desperate and misspelled Google searches. Dropped iPhone in toilet, how fix please. Someone actually sent me. I read the see, I've got these ceiling fans, and I was told if you tie it like to one of the blades of the ceiling fan, just like let it run overnight. And I'm like, okay, so
that sounds like such a bad idea.
That definitely sounds like something I might have seen in a Wile E. Coyote cartoon.
And how do you get it out from when it's embedded in the wall? And when it slides off that fan at Mach 3?
Yeah, it's one solution to the problem, because at least now that it has a broken screen and the case is cracked in 3, now you can't recover it, or at least now there are enough exposed electronics you can really get in there with the hairdryer.
Exactly. Oh, too funny.
Yeah, there's all kinds of little remedies. I've heard of people trying to drop the phone or camera lenses or whatever they would have been in front of their dehumidifier in the basement, and it's like, yeah, that just doesn't sound like it's a good plan either. So yeah, it's nice to have a list like this that really tests and gives people some good ideas. And of course, we'd all love to have the dry-in store, which is that hearing aid drying utility that you mentioned before. But rice is something that I think just about all of us have around the house, so that's probably the best one. And I've actually talked with a few people who, after reading your article, have gone to carrying a Tupperware container with them at all times that's about half full of rice.
Yeah, that's much easier than just like buying a $13 dry bag.
Well, they'll still have the dry bag. But you never know when you're going to get, especially for some of the people who are into like the whitewater rafting and kayaking kind of stuff.
Okay,
you never know when that's not going to work so well.
Yeah.
And getting something like that dry store requires power. So having that Tupperware of rice handy is just always a good idea if you're going to be putting your valuable electronics at risk like that.
Yeah, if you get a hole in that Ziploc baggie or dry bag, it becomes a little terrarium to hold the heat and moisture in there.
Yeah, it's a nice little sauna for your phone.
Yeah, exactly. So if we're out on the trail and the iPhone goes into the creek, what should we do? I mean, what would be your advice? The first thing we do, I mean, obviously pull it out and not just look at the pretty screen underwater.
It would depend on the situation. If it's salt water, enjoy have your friend get the YouTube camera out and have a nice video of you skipping that phone across the water. At least get a wacky video out of it, because salt water means instant death. There's almost no point in even trying to fix it, because that's just death. One of the most heartbreaking. I realized that one of the most heartbreaking viral blog posts I've ever had the misfortune of clicking on was the guy who was on some sort of a rafting expedition. It was a charter, and the boat had a dry box in it, but apparently there's a plug that the captain is supposed to secure before it becomes a dry box. So he put his camera bag in there, and this beautiful $3,000 Leica digital camera that was about a month old got toast. And so he decided to say, well, I can't, this is not under warranty, I can't get this working again. I will simply take it apart, part by part, and get lots of pictures of what this looks like inside. And I was just amazed at how thoroughly the salt water had kicked that camera's butt. There was no part of it that had not been, it wasn't simply a little bit water stained. I'm talking about corroded metal. So it's just pretty terrible. If the water is, obviously, if you can get it out of the water really quickly, before the water has a chance to penetrate. That's your first bet.
Mhm.
If you did not, now here's an odd piece of advice, but if you were not able to get it out of the water quickly, like it is on the bottom of this water, it's been there for a few minutes, you know that every bit has been saturated. What I would then do is treat it like tuna. I would pack it in water. I would not give it a chance to dry out. At that point, whatever damage that could have been done by exposure to, assuming this is clean water, has already been done. Now what you're trying to avoid is the problems that will happen when water starts to evaporate. So if you think that you're going to be able to get back to the shore and back to a remedy within the next hour or two, I would probably hedge my bets and say I'm just going to keep it in a bucket and then get it right in there, because you want to whatever stop any new damage from occurring. I'm reminded of here in the Boston area, we have this wonderful set of salvage stores called Building 19. So it's a regional chain where there's a fire in a warehouse, where a company goes out of business, they buy up all the stock. One of the most famous legendary sales they ever did was the famous Building 19 wet underwear sale, because there's a fire in this big warehouse. All the sprinklers everywhere got turned on. The entire contents of the warehouse got soaking wet, and so they were able to get an incredible deal on this first quality, brand new Hanes men's underwear. But after they made the purchase, they realized that, wait a minute, we're kind of screwed here, because we'll have to pay to send this immediately from the warehouse to a laundry to have it cleaned and dried. But then, of course, they're geniuses. They realize that all we have to do is pack this underwear in water, ship it to the stores in water, set up waiting pools in every single store so that these never get exposed to air and never get a chance to grow mildew on them. And so they sold it for a penny a pound. You're free to wring out the underwear to get as good a deal as you could. And of course, you take them home, you toss them in the dryer. They're as good as new. So just think of that story the next time that you finally, after holding your breath for 30 seconds, manage to get to the bottom of that pool and come back up with your phone. Realize that if you do get into that situation, though, you'll be lucky if it comes back. But this is what I would do if it's wet and it's absolutely permeated. I would want to keep it wet until I have a chance to do something about it.
Right.
That's actually very similar to something that one of our listeners wrote in on. I'm going to pronounce this name wrong, I'm sure. It's Adorfer, I think. And he actually said that he's dunked his electronics on more than one occasion, I guess. But the first thing he does is pull out the battery, and then he uses mineral water or tap water instantly to make sure that he's clearing out anything, any particulate, any acids, and that kind of stuff, to get rid of any of that kind of stuff. And then he'll use demineralized or deionized water.
I'm sorry, that's right. I should have been more specific. I didn't mean get more creek water in the bucket.
No.
But it's worth if you're a smart enough camper to have brought provisions for the day, not smart enough not to have dropped your phone into the river. Yes, you want to use some of your drinking water to do that.
Yeah, use the drinking water to flush out any of the caustic material you can, because the whole idea, well, even if you can pull out the battery, then there should be really no damage from just water, from plain water itself.
Yeah, there should be no additional damage.
And no additional damage. So what happens in water, obviously, is it creates new paths for voltage to travel, and that's where all the damage is done. But if you can remove the battery quick enough, water itself won't hurt it.
You got a shot. And also, I had another experience this year that I wrote about a couple of weeks ago. That's also probably a good thing to talk about, where let's say that the thing is just dead, dropped in the salt water, or you dropped in the mud, mud at the bottom of a creek, and it took you 30 minutes to get at it, or you had to come back next year, next time you got the same cabin again, and this is the time when your niece said, "Hey, what's this shiny thing at the bottom? It says GARMI. Oh my God, you found my GPS." You know the cousin of yours that we didn't invite back this year? That's the one who dropped it off the dock. If it's something like a camera with a memory card on it, and there are important pictures on it, or important data on it, don't just give up on it, even though the device itself is never going to work again, because there are companies that can do a heroic job of recovering data from absolutely ungodly baffed up devices. Once a year here in Boston, if you ever come to Boston, one of the nicest places to go to is the Public Garden, this 150-year-old horticultural garden. It's all kinds of trees and plants surrounding this beautiful, like, man-made lagoon. And they drain the lagoon once a year so they can do maintenance on everything. And so I usually, once a year, like if I got business in town, I'll make sure that I take a walk along the bottom of the drained lagoon, because otherwise it's the only time you can actually see things in the lagoon on the sides of the public garden that otherwise would get you very, very wet and very, very arrested. But this year I was walking along and I found a camera embedded in the mud. And I should mention that another feature of the public garden lagoon is that there is these long boats shaped like they're propelled by fiberglass swans that tourists can take a tour of the lagoon in. Again, it's been around for 120 years. It is a beloved Boston tradition. But yeah, your tourists are there. They're taking pictures from the boat, and boom, it gets dropped off. And so I took it home, did my best to try to get after soaking the thing for a day in water, I managed to chisel the door to the thing open and pry out the memory card. Tried to get the card going again, but the card was just dead. It wasn't even electrically active. So I called a company called Drive Savers, which is one of these legendary data recovery specialists. And they're up for the challenge. And 2 days later, all they had to do was take it into a clean room and, like you do, take your microscopic soldering iron and reestablish the electrical connections between the memory chip and the rest of the board that had been corroded away by what I thought was going to be a year of submersion. It was actually down there for 2 years for some reason, and they got back all 140 pictures and both all the videos that were on there too. So it's this would have been like a $600-700 service. So it's not something you do just to get back blurry pictures of a swan. But if you never know, people, now that we have like cameras with like 32 gigabyte memory cards, you're in sort of the habit of not necessarily archiving everything back to your hard drive when you get home. And so, you know, if you have the last pictures, they actually have a traveling museum of some of the worst disasters they've ever successfully recovered things from. And you see this blackened charcoal blob that you're informed used to be like a 2006 MacBook, because it was in a fire, and it was just like in the fire for like 2 whole days before they can get anything out again. And because the hard drive inside there contained, I think it was something like the one set of financial data that a huge business deal was based on, they sent the blob to Drive Savers. They chiseled out the hard drive. They removed enough of the platters that they could get, they put it again in the clean room, had another model of the exact same hard drive, so they put the old platters in this new mechanism, and they didn't get everything back, but they got enough back to make people forget about how much they had to spend in order to get this emergency service done. So it really is, they are the Ghostbusters of data.
Yeah, we just had a drive that failed. Somebody brought it to us and we said, you know what, it's expensive. Well, how expensive? We called up $1,600 to $1,800 was the cheapest we could find. For a single drive. So it's not cheap, but beats having to reinvent history.
It sure beats having to reshoot your entire feature film all over again.
Good point.
Yeah, now I don't recommend that any of our listeners go and try to do this themselves, open up the drives, but I do know a few of our listeners who would definitely be up for the challenge of opening up that SD card and trying to do the soldering.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would even want to think about trying that, because my soldering skills aren't what they used to be.
No, mine aren't.
Yeah, they sent me the lab report from the recovery, and so they have this microscopic view of the data chip, and even in this extremely magnified view, it's like the gaps between these connectors are wider than the connectors themselves. It's like if ever I need eye surgery, I want someone like this guy to do it, because he clearly knows how to be very, very delicate with very, very small things.
Amazing. Truly amazing.
Yeah, one of the other things that are... I'm not going to try to pronounce your name again, because I'm going to butcher it again. But one of the things that he mentioned that he had accidental baptism was he was up to his scalp when walking in high waders inside a former factory for agricultural fertilizers in the basement of the sulfur storage. And that's when he used that technique with the distilled water. And boy, I'm thinking... It's amazing that he had anything work, but he says he's had his mobile phone and his PMR radio that he was able to bring back. And what's really interesting in his method of drying was above the radiator on his fridge for 48 hours.
Well, it'd be nice in dry heat, but wow, sulfur. That I assume instant death for a device.
Yeah, definitely.
Instant death for the guy. I mean, that's not a place where people want to go.
That's true.
At least I understand this. The quest for adventure that leads people to go down whitewater rapids in an inflatable boat. I don't understand hey, here's a big pile of sulfur and animal waste, and it's an unlocked, condemned building. I'll just wear some really tall rubber boots. I'll be just fine. Was there pirate treasure in this building? That's all I'm asking. If there's pirate treasure in the building, then okay, I'll pass on this one.
For that, I'll go in. I'll just buy a new phone.
Exactly. I will make another $200 in my lifetime. I may not get another set of lungs.
Well, I'll tell you, I love looking at some of this guy's posts on Google Plus, and he's not from the U.S. to say the least, but he's one of these guys who does love to go into the lost places and does some geocaching. But his last post in his stream today is it's just that's what I call abandoned, and it's like a living room that's literally falling down around the entertainment center, and like one of those old Mercedes that's covered in vines where nature's reclaiming it. It's like, oh boy, just some really cool stuff that he's done in the past.
I bet he stumbled in on all kinds of meth lab operations.
I would not doubt that one bit.
No, guys, don't get up. I just want to put this Tupperware container with this notebook and this pen on that. Can I put it on that shelf right there? Don't tell anybody it's there. I'll just mark it.
Oh, yes.
Oh, boy.
Well, Andy, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a real treat to get a chance to talk with you and some great information.
Thanks for having me aboard again. It's nice to talk to people who actually know what a GPS is used for, other than trying to find the nearest Dairy Queen.
Or Starbucks.
You don't need that for Starbucks. Just look. You can see one.
Yeah, they're just about everywhere.
They're across the street from each other.
Yeah, well, you're out in Washington, so it's a little bit more prevalent than it is around here.
Okay.
Not by much, but a little.
You can give directions in the airport here at SeaTac by, you go past the first Starbucks, turn right, go past the next 3, and make your left there, and you'll get to your gate.
Well, Andy, before we let you go, there's a couple of podcasts that you do on a regular basis. One of them is on Twit, and the other is your own. Can you kind of give people a little bit of info on what those two are if they want to go and check them out?
Yeah, if you go to twit.tv, you can check out Mac Break Weekly, which is a weekly podcast for the Twit Network. Technically, it's about the Macintosh, but that was 5 years ago before, named 5 years ago before the iPod and the iPad came about. It's basically about everything that Apple is up to with picks of the week, software picks, tips, all that kind of cool stuff. And that once a week and record it live for streaming on Tuesday and available for podcast, video, and audio shortly thereafter. And then I also have my own podcast called the Anatco Almanac, which is your basic every week something interesting that I think we can discuss for a half hour to 45 minutes, and you can get that on the 5x5 network, 5x5.tv. Soon I'll have a third show that I'm backfilling content for called Old Tech News. I write thousands of words every week for the Sun-Times and other people, and so I thought it'd be fun to essentially do an audiobook edition of stuff I write. But of course, I like the Sun-Times. I think they should have it exclusively for a week. So I thought, well, it's still useful. A review of the Kindle Fire is still useful 2 weeks later. And if we just simply say there's a podcast about old news, things you've already heard of, but you haven't heard about them from me yet, and because it's already written, there isn't over the past 45 minutes, you've probably heard a lot of the me interrupting myself and suddenly coming up with a better idea to the one I was going to say. It's very, very reassuring when you have 12 minutes of script in front of you that all I have to do is read it in a sensible, steady baritone voice, occasionally punching a word for emphasis. So that's old tech news. It'll probably start the week of October 12th or so.
Oh, I love it. I'll have to check that one out for sure. And we'll have links to everything in the show notes for your blog, or well, for your colossal waste of bandwidth, for Twit and for 5x5 and Chicago Sun-Times. And join us, everyone else, next week as we learn more about creating gadget caches with WV Tim. And as always, we'd love to get your feedback about this or next week's show.
So check the Cacheamaniacs website at cacheamaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes from this and all our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647, by emailing geogearheads at cacheamaniacs.com, or through social media. Your support helps keeps the Cacheamaniacs shows coming. Please consider making a PayPal donation through the link on our website to support the Cacheamaniacs shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Umfenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. This show is copyright 2012 by Daryl Wattenberg. All rights reserved.